What is the Eightfold Path, and how can you bring more wisdom into your speech, into your actions, into your lifestyle? That's what we're going to explore today with Gil Fronsdal on Your Life in Process.
Traditionally, the Eightfold Path has two different sides. And one side, and most people know about, they think it's kind of like beginner Buddhism, that you do these beginning steps and this will take you to someplace good. And traditionally, it's the end of suffering, which is pretty phenomenal. But the other side that people don't realize is that the Eightfold Path is also what the person becomes when they mature in this practice. And so rather than it's like something you take on from the outside, you're actually identifying a potential you have on the inside, and you're allowing that potential to grow until the Eightfold Path defines who you are, or is who you are. So it's not a matter anymore of living by the Eightfold Path, but living the Eightfold Path, because it's an expression of who we are. And so, its definition of an enlightened person in Buddhism is that they completely live the Eightfold Path because it's become who they are.
Describe the 8 steps of the Eightfold Path.
So they are right view, the right perspective, the right attitude, or usually the right resolve or intention, right speech, right action, right lifestyle, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And the word right, it's kind of like the way we say, we use the right tool for the job, as opposed to something moralistic exactly. But the original word in the ancient Buddhist language, samma, means more something that's come to completion. So you complete these right perspective, you complete right attitude, you make that complete in you, each step. So again, with the idea of complete, you get the sense that it's not living by some external rules, like the right rules to follow, but it's really, you become the right person when these sides of you mature.
Another word that I've heard for it is wise
Hmm.
view, wise intention, wise speech. And that has that sort of that a different quality than right is sort of righteousness, or that you're right, more uh, sort of inner wisdom when you're practicing these. And the first one of wise view or wise perspective, right view, right perspective, what is that referring to?
Most commonly, it refers to seeing through the lens, the framework of the Four Noble Truths. And so it's not presenting the Four Noble Truths as truths you have to adopt, but rather perspective by which we view our human life as it goes along. And the core aspect of the Four Noble Truths is to view everything that's happening to us as a process. Everything that was happening to us as something that's moving through us, is in flux, in change, and it's dynamic. And once we can really see that for ourselves, then it begins to become loosen up the ways in which we are reifying or have fixed views about ourselves, fixed views about life. And it just keeps opening the doors to see better and better what's happening. And as we do that, then we start seeing that when we cling, when we get attached and hold on, it hurts. There's an ouch. And when we stop clinging, the ouch goes away. And that's the perspective. And it's not a perspective that's supposed to provide great universal truths about the nature of the cosmos. It's really something that's very personal and direct, and kind of the common denominator of all experience. That if you cling to anything, there will be an ouch of some sort or other. And if you can see how to let go of that clinging, then the ouch goes away.
So the right view is to have that perspective, to see when you're clinging or when you're pushing something away and how that's causing your suffering. Just waking up to that fact that that's what you're doing. That's why it
Yes,
hurts.
yes.
Okay.
But rather than believing that, that becomes obvious when the attention, when the settledness, the calm, allows you to see that everything is always in flux. Everything's always shifting and changing and moving in our direct experience. The way we experience life, the way we experience ourselves, especially, it's all dynamic. And there's something about seeing the dynamic nature of present moment experience that can highlights how clinging is 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 not so good to be involved in.
Hi, I'm Dr. Diana Hill. Thank you so much for joining me with Your Life in Process. And if you want more, if you're interested in applying these processes to your daily life, join me at my membership, More Life in Process. At More Life in Process, you will get meditations for you to practice at home. You'll get extra bits from the episode that maybe got recorded after the fact. You're going to get PDFs and handouts, things that you can use to apply your daily practice to your life. And I can't wait to see you there. $5 a month, $50 for the year. You can go to yourlifeinprocess.com to sign up. Let's give a real life example because we're talking about it in sort of a, conceptual way, but the ways in which I see that all the time in my life because I'm a clinger. And uh, even just this past weekend, I was having people over. And I was mentioning that our friend, our mutual friend, Shelly, she's my neighbor and she teaches with you.
Yeah.
And I've been hosting this neighborhood ice cream party for years, ever since my little kids. At the end of summer, everyone comes over and we have homemade ice cream together. And it's been really, really sweet. And it started out just as my neighbors. And my neighbors I'm comfortable with my neighbors coming over because they're my neighbors. They see it all, right? They borrow a cup of flour. They see my house a mess. They hear my kids screaming. They hear me getting mad at my kids. But this ice cream party has grown to include friends and then new people, like new people from school. And what I noticed started happening is what used to be something that was very of ease to me, it was very joyful and enjoyable, started becoming very stressful. And I woke up and all I could see was the things that were wrong with my house and the things that needed painting and the broken tile in the kitchen and worrying that the s'mores ice cream, I used dark chocolate and I should have used milk chocolate. It just the story
Yeah.
going on there. How would right view help with something like that when we get caught up in a story about who we are or whether people like us?
It's easier to understand this if you assume or imagine that you are present enough to see in the dynamic changing nature of how things are occurring, that you see the arising of the thought, the concern, the beginning of that thought concern. I should have used a different chocolate. And and if you're right there and you see that there was a before when that thought wasn't happening, and you see it arise, then really clearly in a calm mind, there's kind of like a question mark that goes, "Is this real? Is this really something I have to believe in? Is this really a useful thing?" And then as you see that thought arise, you might also see that you get contracted or tight or resistant or something to it. And because you're seeing it arise right at the beginning, you have the chance to say, well, I don't know if I need to stay involved in this. I don't have to pick this up. And I can just let it be and let it just kind of fade away. Now, that's very different from people who are not paying careful attention to the beginning of what these things and they find themselves suddenly they're in the middle of it. They're full of chocolate thoughts and concerned about it and upset. And it's just a big, complex set of attachments, not just one. It's not just a chocolate. It's how my friends are going to see me, and and my kids are going to be upset because they wanted something else or something. And so all this stuff, and now we're in the middle of this big mess, and then it's hard to kind of begin finding our way through it until we calm down somehow. But if you're calm enough to see the genesis of this, and that's kind of what the Buddha was trying to point people to, is to develop a state of mind, enough calm that when things arise, where you have much more choice. So you want to kind of live in that choice point where you can, oh, look at that. There I am. Back to this chocolate question. It's come up again. I've done this before. I've seen myself cling. but because I just saw it arise, I think I have more choice here.
Yeah. So one way to practice developing right view is through practicing noticing your mind in meditation, and you lead people through guided meditations every week
Yeah.
at the Insight Center. And I find that that is helpful for me. But actually, what was most helpful for me in that situation was to call a friend
Yes.
and to tell her all my neuroses, and
Yeah.
then just have her look at me
Uh-huh.
and then see myself through her eyes. That helped me develop right view to see, "Oh, okay, why am I'm so caught up in just hearing the story." What would be what would be your suggestions and how to cultivate this this type of observation of our thoughts?
Two things. One is that I suspect you already had right view to call your friend because something in you knew that it doesn't have to be this way.
Ah,
Something you saw it clearly enough that it doesn't have to be this way, and there must be a way to let go of something, let something pass away or shift. And I can't do it by myself, but I'll talk to a friend and get that kind of support. So you already have beginning of right view right there. You know that it's changeable, and there's a way to change it, and for you asked a friend to support you. If you want to do it by yourself, then uh, if you're really caught up in something, ideally you would take a break and go for a walk or take a nap or lay down or meditate to kind of let something settle enough so you can begin seeing the place of choice and you can say, oh, okay, there it is. And some of that is just truth telling to yourself. I mean, I guess you were truth telling to your friend. You were just saying how it is, and being heard is enough sometimes to kind of kind of not be so tight around it. But you can also do that to yourself. You can be a truth teller, and part of the function of mindfulness practice is to be a person who knows how to tell the truth to themselves. Oh, this is what's happening. Oh, this is what's happening. And oh, here it is. And sometimes just that can begin loosening up. But then, if you knew you have a tendency at these neighborhood friend parties, ice cream parties, you get stressed now these recent years. So maybe you would then spend the first hour of the morning before you start it all up, doing some contemplative practice that gets you in a good mood, or do something that gets you calm and settled and present, so that when the thoughts and concerns and fears begin to rise, you're right there to catch them right away.
so those are great practices. Thank you. The second step on the Eightfold Path is about right intention, which, um, could apply to the ice cream party, but could apply to lots of different things of how are we, um, how are we what's our intention even in doing this interview? We paused at the beginning and set a little intention. Can you talk about right intention and how that may be useful to folks?
Oh, I think focusing on intention is invaluable because so much follows the intention if we're able to live by the intention. And often we're living, if we just pay attention to what intention, what purpose we're living by, sometimes we see it's not very healthy or what's going on. So if you have this ice cream party and your intention is to just to help people be relaxed and enjoy each other and feel accepted, then it doesn't matter what choice of ice cream you made. So to kind of clarify the purpose, the intention of why we're doing anything, and have the ability to check in deeply enough to see the subconscious, automatic pilot kind of intentions which don't serve us is really good.
Yeah, well, the intention for me is, often with my kids is for them to have a playful, fun experience and to create community and connection. And yeah, if I'm caught up in how my house looks, I'm not having fun or creating community. So yes, that could be helpful in terms of considering intention. And what are the practices there? How do we cultivate intention?
Yeah. I think that in the way that it appears in the Eightfold Path, there's actually for this right intention, it's actually a little bit deeper than So your intention is to have, your kids have a good time, and but you want to go deeper. What's the attitude that's feeding that intention? If the attitude is fear, that my kids are going to hate me as a mom, as if I don't give them a good time, and you're afraid of that. That's very different than if it comes out of generosity. I just feel generous. I feel I woke up good today. I feel great. I just want to do something really nice for my kids. They've school just started. It'd be nice for them to have a nice party, and it's just all from your generosity. And so, the right intention on the Eightfold Path is actually going deeper than the plan we have, the purpose we have, and seeing what's the underlying attitude that's motivating it. And one of the things that in the classically in Buddhism that the attitude that's most supportive, that's emphasized here, is an attitude of kindness and compassion. So, am I doing this with an attitude of kindness and compassion? Or am I doing it out of some kind of conceit or something?
Or getting people to like me, or impressing people,
Right.
which can quickly pull us away from kindness and compassion.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the external intention, everyone might see the external intention as you're really there to give everyone a good time, but the deeper kind of attitude underneath it, they might not see. But that's what you can see, and that's why a strong capacity for introspection allows you to see the deeper operating principles,
Mhm.
so that you can have ones that are supportive for you, healthy for you, and not ones that are unhealthy.
There's a line that you write in, your books, The Steps to Liberation, that says, "Relaxation is a relief, ease is a state of being."
Uh-huh.
And, it makes me think of that intention, like, is the intention trying to relieve you of something that's uncomfortable, or get something back to that clinging again, or is the intention to be in a state of being,
Yeah.
in kindness or in compassion? And it shifts how you feel, at least for me, when I think about that, it shifts how I feel in my body when I'm in an intention that is about getting rid of something or getting something to make me feel better, versus stepping into a state that I want to emanate and spread.
That's fantastic. So now you understand why it's important to, you know, be mindful, so you can see that.
Yeah. Okay, so we could bring right intention into any activity, whether it's our meditation or
Right.
parenting or work. The next one is right speech, the third factor. And you say right intention, the second factor of the Eightfold Path, sets the stage for the next three factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Grouped together as practices of virtue, these three factors are concerned with how the intentions of wise renunciation, goodwill, and compassion are expressed in our daily lives. So maybe we can talk about those three: right speech, right action, right livelihood.
Great, great. Yeah, so right intention sets the stage, and, to make it really simple, is, so it's more applicable in all kinds of situations. One way of understanding right intention is whatever the situation you're in, don't make it worse. Just don't make it worse. And if you don't know what to do, just don't make it worse. And so in terms of speech, right speech, that's probably the most common way that adults make the situation worse, is by saying something maybe that's hurtful for someone or difficult for someone. And so you want to watch the speech, don't make it worse. And if you have the wherewithal to do it, make the situation better. Speak from kindness and compassion, from generosity, from truthfulness. And the key thing about right speech is to speak in ways that are truthful, and speak in ways that people feel supported. They feel cared for. They feel that there's a friendliness here. It's not harsh. It's not mean. It's not. And so, and it's not an ethical thing in the Western idea of ethics, where thou shalt, you should be right, speak honestly. It's more understanding that speaking well and is and carefully and kindly, truthfully, it's also really better for you. It just, it can be actually nourishing then. The whole idea of this Eightfold Path is to live in a way that feels nourishing for you and to have this inner nourishment that fills you and know how to avoid making things worse for yourself. And so right speech is motivated by that with the support of greater mindfulness. You're really paying attention to not only what you're saying, but also how you're saying it.
Yeah. It just was going through my head is an interaction I had with my kids yesterday where I was not in right speech,
Uh-huh.
and, I got so I just got so mad. My son was playing Fortnite with his friends, and I really don't like video games, and I really don't like that particular video game, and, I came in and sort of caught him playing it, and I was so quick to yell and so quick to, blame, and when I did that, it led to him being defensive, and then it carried forward to later on in the day, me still feeling that the aftermath of that energy between us and feeling then I just started feeling guilty and like a terrible parent. So, when we're caught in that moment when we say something that we regret or we get overcome by emotion, how do we practice right speech? And I know there's like, yes, practice mindfulness and take a mindful pause, but I I couldn't in that moment. I was so taken.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's nothing you can do if you're just on automatic pilot.
Yeah.
Reactivity is that strong. So, and parenting is just a setup for. I think parenting is just. I kind of think parenting is almost impossible. so, so so to be a little bit generous to yourself and realize that how difficult it is difficult. But I think human life, we're always making mistakes. And this Eightfold Path is not meant to be this idea of right, that you'll never be wrong. It's a lot of it has to do when you are wrong, when you make a mistake, how do you recover from that? And to apply the Eightfold Path in the recovery makes the whole difficulty now gets transformed into something that's actually beneficial. And so, in terms of right speech and what you want to demonstrate with kids is if you really make a mistake with your kids, maybe at some point when you can, is to show that the kids that you realize you made a mistake and say, I realize, I'm upset with you. I was upset with you one more time during fourth night, and we have an agreement about when you can do it or something like that. And that was really hard for me to come in but I should not have reacted so quickly and spoken the way I did, and, I apologize, and I am gonna try to do better, and I'm gonna try to find other ways to hold you accountable that are kinder and maybe ones that you appreciate when I do it. So that then it's what we do how we recover from the mistakes and what we demonstrate to others that's really the real art of parenting.
Mhm. And of relationships,
Yes.
with our partners or,
Yeah.
relationships at work. Yeah, that's
And
beautiful.
so
Yeah.
this is where the second, the right intention comes into play as well, because, we always wanna find the place where we can speak from kindness and compassion as opposed to meanness and cruelty. And so many people are mean and cruel to themselves. Like, "Oh, I'm a terrible parent. I'm the worst parent probably that ever existed, and I just failed, and how could I be so bad?" And it's like self-flagellation, what goes on. It's really sad how hard we can be. And it's understandable that we are hard because it's so important, the whole relationship to kids and family and all kinds of things. But the Eightfold Path is pointing another possibility and to ask, that's the question of, am I making it worse? Let's not make it worse. What would make it better? Let's see, can I find a place inside, even a little hint of kindness, of compassion, of generosity?
Yeah, the not making it worse, that's actually one of the first skills of there's a therapy called dialectical behavior
Uh-huh.
therapy, and, one of the first distress tolerance skills and the therapy is designed for folks that have really extreme emotion regulation. They do things like cut themselves or binge drink or binge eat, and one of the first skills you teach is, the skill of not making things worse.
Oh, of course.
Do whatever it is that you could do to not make things worse, and
Yes.
I remember coaching a client who was binge eating and she didn't wanna make it worse, and so she took all of the food out of her car and she put it in front of her car and she just ran her car forward and back over the food, and she's like, "At least this isn't making it worse."
Fantastic. I love
You know?
that.
So there's lots of ways we cannot make it worse, and yeah, I think yelling when I catch my kid playing Fortnite because it's a violent game and then I'm being violent towards him, I'm making it worse, and then when I'm violent towards myself for being violent towards him with my words, I wasn't physically violent, but I was loud and, angry, and then I'm angry towards myself, I am making it worse, so um, that's a good
And
skill.
as a
Yeah,
parent, you have a big presence, and I don't underestimate sometimes that just standing there silently, a lot can happen. Just stand there silently next to them and or something, and make yourself presence known, and say, what's going on here, or what's happening, or I'm here. What do you think should happen now that I'm here?
yeah,
And just kind of you don't have to assert yourself in terms of voice, but just make yourself present so they have to somehow take that into account. And after a while, they say, "Oh, this is not worth it."
nice. Yeah, just make yourself present.
And that
Okay, so right action.
your right action is so more of the same. It's living, expressing in action, uh, kindness and non-cruelty, kindness and compassion. And to kill people is not kind, is not compassionate. To steal from them is not kind and compassionate. And to engage in willful, intentional sexual misconduct. It's hard, it's one way or the other, even though it might seem in the moment that sex is all good. It can cause so much harm all around. So it's not the compassionate thing to do for our society, for our friends, for the other people connected, and sometimes not even to the partner. So to be very careful about our actions, and and uh, and then I keep on stressing that it's not just for the sake of others. Sometimes it's also for our own sake, and caring for ourselves is the heart of the Eightfold Path. And so each of these steps, not killing, not stealing, and not engaging in sexual misconduct, is the art of it is to recognize how doing that is how it benefits us, how it's nurturing, how it opens up something inside of us that leads to kind of inner maturation, inner growth, inner beauty, even. One of the reference points in Buddhism for doing the Eightfold Path is discovering inner beauty and then staying close to that.
One of the things that people can get caught up in with right action is things like whether or not to become a vegetarian. This is the most common question on retreat, probably with the Eightfold Path. If I'm following the Eightfold Path, should I become a vegetarian or should I stop drinking or do I, need to become vegan and not wear leather? What is your response to that to folks that want to follow some of these ethical
Most
teachings? Yeah,
so this is maybe the answer that's a little bit unique to me, maybe.
yeah.
Uh, but generally, I appreciate that people want to ask those questions, and I'll appreciate it. It's like, great, it's wonderful that I love it that people ask these kinds of questions because these are good questions to ask and to be conscious of the choice. But I don't like to make the choice. I don't like to tell people what to do. I'd rather for you to kind of keep the question and really explore the depth of it and within you and what feels right for you and what happens to you when you do eat meat. What happens when you take into account the wider uh, impact that meat or alcohol has for our society, and for to really consider it for yourself, um, and your own situation, because some people have health reasons why they feel like they need to have meat, or they need it. And if I kind of tell people do this or that, then it becomes into kind of a moralistic stance, rather than this thing we want to see in Buddhism. We want to see it arise from inside. That we become the ethical person rather than taking it on these rules. Occasionally, like with alcohol, if someone is really having a lot of trouble with it, abusing it, causing a lot of harm, every evening they're angry and yelling at their kids because they're drunk or something. Occasionally, if it seems like the right thing for someone, I will tell them to stop, that they shouldn't do this. And that's using kind of my, I don't know, the authority people give me as a Buddhist teacher, uh, in a way that I hope they need to hear, because they need someone outside of them to kind of set the limits sometimes. And I don't like to do that. I don't like to have that kind of role in people's lives, but the suffering is so great that's being done, and they don't seem to they seem to really need that kind of outer kind of authority figure even to make a statement. And then occasionally I'll do it.
Well, yeah, it's similar to what you're describing in terms of parenting, that the first aspect may be just to stand there and
Yeah,
create space with your presence, or just the presence of um, contemplating what does wise action mean to
yeah.
you, and how do these different actions impact you and also impact how you are with others or how you are in the world. And then maybe sometimes there's a point where, as a parent, you come in and you take the remote control and say, "We need to turn this off now.
Yeah.
This is unhealthy for you." And you can't seem to do it yourself. So I want to help you do that. And the same thing as a therapist. I shy away from giving advice or telling people what to do, and want to encourage them to come to it their own unique life and what that's going to look like for them on their own. But sometimes I will give advice if I see that they're harming themselves or harming another person.
An interesting place where I saw that, but I became a parent a little bit late in life. And I'd been a Buddhist practitioner, monastic for many years first. And so when coming from Buddhism, I was always trying to be s- friendly, kind, supportive, allowing for people, make space for people, and not restrict them or do something. And then I saw with my kids that sometimes they would. Um, the interpretation that I kind of liked was that um, they're going to push the limits until there's a no, because then they know where the boundary of safety is. And in fact, I would see that sometimes they were really starting to be crazily misbehaving, and my kind of calm, accepting kind of way of being wasn't really what was called for. I had to say, "No, you can't do that. Stop," in a very kind of clear way. And remember one of them when I did that, when he was like 1 year or 1.5 years old, would look at me for a moment like I was one of the, worst torturers there's ever been on the planet. Just for a moment or two, just look at me like, but then immediately he was so much happier. And then he was happy for quite a while. It was kinda like now he knew the limit, and he knew where the safety was, and he could relax. So, maybe sometimes kids need to hear limits, but, the question is how do you set it in a nice way?
Yeah, and what's the intention behind the limit
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well, and expressing that to them. Yeah. And so a component of right action is the non-harming, but another component is not stealing. It's not taking what is not given.
Mhm.
And we think about stealing as the simple things like don't go in the grocery store and pocket a candy bar, but this type of not stealing is actually something can be something deeper and bigger when we look at either stealing of ideas, stealing of from cultures, stealing from our environment, the natural resources. Uh, can you talk a little bit about that, the sort of non-stealing aspects of right action?
Yeah, I think taking what's not given well, that's the classic wording of it, is that then we can question if it's not given, why am I taking it? What's motivating it? And if it's not given, then there's a kind of a higher level of impulse that has to operate. And what is that? Is it are you disconnected from the people who it might affect? Are you kind of in your little personal bubble of what you want and forget everybody else? Is there some attachment involved, some clinging, some compulsion involved? Is there some sometimes it involves anger and fear and greed and conceit. All these things kind of can involve when we have to take something which is not given. Um, and so I think it's all these things are moments to pay attention to what's driving us. And that reference point that hasn't been given. Why do I think I can take it? What's happening with me? And then there's the opposite. The other side of this is that when it's given, then it's an act of generosity. Then there's a kind of a ease. It's kind of like, then we can open up and say, oh, yes, this is healthy. This is good. And, and, it's just a nice to live in a world of things are freely given. And then we can start freely giving ourselves.
Nice. So related to that is right livelihood,
Mm.
giving things freely. We were exchanging a little bit of emails before we started this conversation about my consent form for the podcast. But part of the consent form had to do with commercial rights, and you were expressing concern about that, and about the, really wanting to make clear that you offer your teachings freely. And obviously, this podcast is also free. One of the reasons why I haven't had sponsors on the podcast is that I want it to be free.
Uh-huh.
Um, and even in the sense of just free from you having advertisements in your head of me selling you a face cream or some green juice. But right livelihood, how what how do we practice? I guess it's right lifestyle or right livelihood on the Eightfold Path.
Yeah. If it's livelihood, then it has to do with work, which you
Mhm.
and there's a lot of strange ideas we have in the modern world about work and how important it is and what it's for, and our self-worth can be tied up in work. Um, and uh, and then also the reason people work sometimes is not really the best reasons. And so right livelihood again is, am I doing it for a purpose that I feel good about, that I'm inspired by? Am I a better person? And it might be that it's not so much what you do that's important, but how you do it. So I think in the modern world, many people are really neurotically concerned about having the right what in terms of work. But some people, what is not that important. What's valuable is how they do it. Do they do it with kindness? They do it with generosity. They do it with love. And so asking some deeper questions about what's the purpose? What am I trying to do? Does this nourish me? Does it support me? Does it support the world? Uh, you know, what's the greater good here? And if livelihood and work is only about making money, some people want to make a lot of money and they barrel over other people and don't care about other people. They just want to make as much money as they can. Um, and then some people are poor and they just feel lucky that they're working at all, and and maybe their work is not uh, something they feel proud about or feel happy with, but they have no choice. They feel like they have to support their family. So the whole livelihood thing is a challenging thing. Um, but I think in the Eightfold Path, you want to always ask the question of what's the purpose here? Uh, what's the clinging here? What am I attached to? Is there a way of doing this that I can be freer and more compassionate, more loving, and do it for a purpose that inspires me? And so that again, as I keep saying, for a purpose that inspires me means it really comes from inside rather than outside concern about what people will think or, what the outer world will judge me or what Buddhism has to say as if I have to become a good Buddhist.
you recommend that we reflect on what are we producing and what are we consuming.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love those two ideas. I um, sort of think about my livelihood as a sort of like a little ecosystem that's it's producing stuff, it's consuming stuff, and then the third part of an ecosystem is also decomposition. Like the breaking down
Huh?
of stuff. And am I allowing enough time for the breaking down, so the worms and the compost and the downtime, so that then I can produce something that is richer, and then also I can be more conscious of what I'm consuming, knowing that whatever I consume also needs time to break down.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting kind of way of looking at our work or how we live in the world. Um, Many of us are just, I mean, I certainly can get caught up in working out of scarcity or working because I'm trying to prove myself in some way or working because I have some endpoint to get to. And this type of right livelihood is different than that.
Wonderful. I love that you're thinking this way. And I think with right livelihood, but also, with right lifestyle, what we consume, what we produce, what the decomposition is, it points to a very important part of Buddhist way of thinking is what's the impact am having? What's the effect? And and that takes a little. That's a little bit more. That's more than just being mindful in the present moment. That's actually stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, the bigger ecology that I'm part of. Is what consequences of this? Once you put your trash in the trash can and let the garbage company pick it up, do you just, well, it's not my responsibility anymore. I don't have to think about this ever again. But in fact, you've contributed to something that has ripple effects out into the world that might those effects might go on for years. And you've been putting all your leaded batteries into the garbage for years, and that's going to leach into the groundwater and all kinds of things. And so, what's the consequence of your actions is a hugely important part of Buddhist practice. And in fact, that's the heart of the teachings of karma. The heart of this karma teaching is not so much concerned with why you're experiencing something now because of your past, but rather what you're doing now and what effect it'll have for the future. What are the consequences for yourself, the world, for others? And that also kind of changes the whole orientation when you start taking consequences into account.
Mhm. Certainly, yeah. I mean, I know that my work has consequences not only for my clients, or there's consequences of doing a podcast like this in terms of sharing ideas in the world, how it may impact people's day that are listening, but it also has consequences for my family of when I'm working, how much I'm working, the stress that I bring home from work. All of that has a ripple effect into our family life. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, thinking more systemically about our actions. Uh,
Yes. So some people to kind of focus too narrowly and, "Oh, my intention was good. I had good intentions. Um, so it shouldn't matter, that my family's stressed out." That
I was doing good things in the world.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So right effort, wise effort. Actually, this whole season of the podcast has been focused on wise effort, and actually have learned a lot from you about wise effort. I love your teachings on wise effort, and you group it together. Well, not you in the Buddhist teachings. It's grouped together: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, as sort of factors that are related to the mind and the heart. But describe your definition of wise effort.
To make it really simple, we come back to what I've said already, that don't make it worse. If you are making it worse, stop. If you're not making it better, start making it better. And if you are making it better, keep doing it. That's the simplest way of saying that. The Buddhist way of saying it is a little bit complicated. What they say is something like, if unwholesome behavior has not yet arisen, don't allow it to arise. If unwholesome behavior has arisen, let go of it. If wholesome behavior has not just occurring, bring it forth. And if wholesome behavior has arisen, then develop it, increase it, spread it out, let it become abundant. Let yourself become abundant in wholesome qualities. It's almost a celebratory kind of way the early Buddhist text Buddha talks about if you're already doing something that's better, that's wholesome, and the language is wholesome or skillful, healthy. If you're doing something which is really healthy for you and the world, it's almost celebratory. Keep doing it, expand it, spread it out, make yourself feel abundant in it. And if we're doing unhealthy things, the language is one of protection. Protect and let go. Protect yourself from having these things occur, and if they do occur, let them go. And then the wholesome ones initiate them, and then if they're initiated, just keep celebrating them.
Which one of those steps do you think is hardest for folks? Is it the letting go of the unwholesome or the cultivating the wholesome? What do you notice?
I think it's different for different people, or different for different phases of people's lives. I think for some people, it's really hard to let go. And most people don't think about the first of protecting themselves, protecting them in such a way that the unwholesome, unhealthy doesn't even start, doesn't begin. That's kind of foreign idea. But that's something that begins stronger as we begin to do some like spiritual practice where we become really settled on ourselves. So we have a chance to see, as I talked about earlier, the beginning. Oh, this is good. I feel good now. And let me stay close to this feeling of calm and settledness because I know that then I'm protected from getting reactive. But I think people, it's really hard for people to let go. It's hard to understand what letting go is. And once people have a better sense of what letting go is, how to let go of the unwholesome, then some people have a hard time really staying close to the healthy, really staying close. Some people get attached to the healthy, which is unhealthy. It's unhealthy to be attached to the healthy. Some people get a lot of conceit around it. They're supposed to be always smiling or something. But I think that to have this kind of celebration and joy and delight and just with the wholesome, the healthy states of mind, uh, that's something not enough people really understand and appreciate.
Mm.
That's my best answer I have for you.
Yeah, we could think about that in terms of our mental states, our physical health, our relationships, right? Effort in all of those, right? Like the prevention aspect of health, of taking care of our bodies that many of us neglect, right? We don't work on prevention, we work on treating the disease, not necessarily preventing the disease, and how important it is to work towards prevention, but also just prevention in our relationships, prevention of the escalation or um, the hurt feelings. And how do we do that with our partners or our friends? I was actually just talking to a friend of mine a lot of my friends are colleagues. So I have these, sort of dual roles where we have relationships that are professional, but also relationships that are friendships. And my past lives, my professional relationships have often gotten me in trouble with my friendships. And so I was talking to this friend of mine, and we were talking about working on something together. And just up front, we talked about how do we prioritize our friendship? Like that no matter what, the friendship comes first, right? Before anything related to this project. And that's sort of a form of prevention, like preventing the unwholesome from creeping in. And then
Yeah.
if it does, how could we abandon the project to hold on to the friendship if we needed to, right? And then um, the the sort of arousing of the positive mental states. How are we gonna be with each other while we work on this project so that we keep it fun or we keep it engaged or we keep it connected? And then, how do we maintain that joy of working together? So we could apply this wise effort to so many different aspects of our living.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And yeah, and I mean, it just, it's using common sense that we have in other things we do and applying it to our mind. So this preventive, to do the things. And some people feel like their minds and mental activity has a mind of its own and they feel no sense of agency over it. But to realize that you can practice good preventive practices with your mind is a game changer for some people.
How do we do that? How do you practice with your mind? Good preventive practices.
Well, living ethically is one. practicing right speech and right action. Just so our actions are aligned. Our actions are aligned with not giving into the worst impulses we have. I think that's a powerful preventive thing. And then cultivating a degree of calm and happiness and well-being, doing things which are nurturing for us, it sets the stage that because sometimes unhealthy things are done because we're feeling a sense of lack, or feeling a sense of insecurity, or feeling kind of lousy, and we want something to kind of to help us escape from how bad we're feeling. And so whatever we can do to kind of build up some modicum of well-being and do healthy things that does that. If a person is um, feeling lonely and then just starts eating to fill the loneliness, and then they eat so much that they just feel too miserable to go out to see anybody else and have any contact with other people, and then they feel even worse. And then, of course, the answer is to eat more. I had this thing when I was in my early 20s. I was working at a bakery, and I would always comfort myself with eating baguettes. That was my comfort food. But I developed a wheat intolerance. But I didn't know that, so I would um, feel lousy. And so, of course, I had baguettes to comfort me, and then I'd feel worse. But I didn't know it was the wheat. And so I would eat more and more. And I spiraled out of, I thought I should be institutionalized because my mind wasn't working. So it got that bad. So so if sometimes we do the very things that make us feel worse because we're feeling so bad, we're looking for something. And so to find healthy things to do, sometimes actually get out of the house and be around people, or call friends, or go to some gathering where you're welcome to come and be with people. Even if you don't talk to them, can provide some of that contact that begins to protect us from giving into the difficult feelings that can be when we're personally challenged.
Which relates to right mindfulness, being able to have that awareness of the body, the awareness of, oh, I'm eating the baguette and then it's making me feel terrible. And then I'm going back to the baguette and I feel maybe a little comfort or relief initially, but then everyone has their version of baguette,
Mhm.
Gil, So, like, for someone else, the baguette is clicking on a specific app on their phone that makes them feel relief, but then they feel worse
Uh-huh.
when they keep on doing it. Or for somebody else, it's uh, drinking or whatever it is that is their version of the baguette that short term feels good, but long term makes them sicker. And mindfulness of the body, you write about mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feeling tones, mindfulness of mental states, and mental processes are all part of right mindfulness.
Yeah. So these are 4 areas of our lived life that are particularly useful to pay attention to, because they're kind of at the center of what motivates us and makes us work, and what provides really good information about what's happening. So I think Buddhism puts a tremendous emphasis on being embodied, being connected in a deep way to our body. The body that we experience is intimately connected to our heart and our mind. And so as we care for our body, pay attention to it, we get lots of information. We do lots of healing can happen. Um, and, uh, and guidance can happen from being connected to our body. Feeling tones is whether things are basically pleasant and unpleasant. And it's remarkable how much very sophisticated people, they have all kinds of sophisticated reasons for what they do. What's really driving them is they're chasing pleasure and avoiding discomfort. And it's a really powerful, this amoeba like kind of uh, going way towards pleasure and away from this discomfort. So to pay attention to that, how that works, can give a lot of freedom as we start realizing, oh, look at that, I'm chasing pleasure. I'm running away from the discomfort. And I like to often teach that if we have some kind of deep mental liberation, freedom, and you're only free when you're comfortable, you're not really free. You have to find how to be free when you're uncomfortable as well, because that's discomfort is part of life. And then mental states are such a big influence on us. And we're really, the emotional state that we're living in can affect our bias, our prejudice, can affect our mood, can affect so many things. So if we start paying attention to the quality, I call it the quality of our inner being. So what's the quality of our heart, our inner being? Is it one that we feel nourished by, or one that we feel depleted by? And then we have a chance maybe to begin recognizing more and more the ones that are nourishing, the ones that are enlivening and expanding. Uh, and so the more we can pay attention to the mind state or the quality of the inner life, the more we can begin choosing and appreciating those times when there's positive ones and prioritizing them when they're available. And then the fourth one of these areas that Buddha talked about is the operating principles upon which the mind is operating. Not everything, but those operating principles of the mind that lead us to making things worse, suffer, and those operating principles that support us to let go of the clinging. And so when practice gets really mature and developed, mindfulness gets strong, then we start seeing more clearly these operating principles, the moments of choice, and where we can choose either to cling more or choose to let go of the clinging.
So many of these aspects of the Eightfold Path reflect each other and are, have threads that are similar to each other in terms of what you're talking about there, right? Mindfulness has a thread of right intention and right view as well to it. Um, the last one is we've made it almost to number 8 here. The last one is right concentration. What is right concentration when it comes to this Eightfold Path, and why is it important for us to practice?
Well, if concentration is seen as kind of a singular focus of the mind, like able to focus and stay present for something like a conversation or whatever we're doing, then if that's the focus, then it's just trying to override our state of mind or state of heart, how we actually are more broadly. If we feel disconnected to ourselves and stressed and agitated, and then we try to add concentration on top of that, it's not going to be possible. It's just too hard. It's stressful. The Buddhist idea of samadhi, with a word that's translated as concentration, is more closely associated with unification and more than a kind of a mental focus, like like zeroing in as a laser on something. The idea is to kind of develop a sense of wholeness, a sense of unification. All of us here together, all of us, our whole body, mind, heart, everything is kind of like operating together in some holistic sense. And from that kind of wholeness, it's pretty natural to be focused. It's pretty natural to be able to be inclusive of what we want to focus on and be here. And so samadhi, so these first seven aspects of the path are ways of starting to put together the fragmented parts of ourselves, and so they can all begin working together and being whole. And when that matures, then there's these wonderful states of samadhi that can happen. These states of wholeness, states of unification, states of unfragmentedness that can exist.
Yeah, that's a different type of concentration. If you're with somebody that's from this state of wholeness and samadhi, it's different than I'm really trying to concentrate and figure out what you're saying. It's more about I am fully present, embodied, whole
Yes.
with you. Yeah, that feels different. And how do we cultivate right concentration?
Practicing the first seven steps. You can't really become whole if you are living unethically. That doesn't work. So you have to get your ethical life a little bit cleaned up, because otherwise it's too agitated, too fragmented, too much involved in attachments and clinging to really become whole. And some people, it's living an ethical life. Some people, it's right intention that's necessary, because if we have to find a healthy attitude for ourselves, the compassionate, the kindness, and without that, there's no concentration. If you're just treating yourself as your own enemy, you're now so fragmented that the two sides can't really become whole. So part of the function of right intention is to bring the kind of kindness, compassion, love to oneself, discover what that is, so that we're not divided against ourselves.
Well, thank you, Gil, for this walk through the Eightfold Path. I don't know if this is what you were expecting, but I you handled it beautifully. The book that I was referencing today is Steps to Liberation, the Buddhist Eightfold Path. And it's really like, it's tiny, it's thin.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first got it and I was working on it with my client, we were like, we could just read this, we'll read this week and we'll talk about it next week. And then recently my client came back and he was like, I think I'm going to work on this for the next year, a step a month, basically.
Uh-huh.
So, but it's an ongoing practice. And at the beginning, we set an intention. I'm curious what your intention was and if you feel like we fulfilled it today.
Oh, my intention was just to be present and participating in a way that was supportive for you and hopefully for your audience. It was very simple. I didn't know what to expect and at all. It was nice for me because I told my wife like I was going to do a podcast tomorrow, yesterday, and I think she asked, "What are you going to talk about?" I don't know, but I think maybe she's going to ask about my life, and I hope she doesn't.
Oh, really?
Well, I told my wife I'm a little bit bored telling that story.
Okay. So, okay. Now we have to, can you tell the story? You can't leave us hanging then. What's the boring story? Real
But
quick, real
no,
quick.
no, it's just real quick. I started Buddhist practice when I was probably 19 or 20, and just followed that path for solidly nothing else for about 10, 12 years. And then I left it to study Buddhism in college or graduate school.
Mhm.
And then I started teaching Buddhism. That's that's it. That's the boring side.
And were you a monk at some point?
Yes.
You're one of that there's a number of you out there floating
Yes.
around.
It's
Was a
not.
monk,
Yes.
correct? Or where?
Well, I was ordained first in California at the San
Okay,
Francisco Zen Center. And then I was ordained again in Japan when I practiced in Japan.
Japan, yeah,
And then for a brief while, I ordained in Burma.
okay. And you worked with Jack Cornfield as well. He was one of your
Well,
teachers?
he wasn't exactly my meditation teacher, but he trained me to become a teacher. And so I did teacher training with him and then kind of taught with him for many years.
Yeah, so that's a totally interesting story, and maybe we should have put that at the beginning, but I just wanted to dive into the teachings. There is this element of, I think, sometimes in these conversations where people feel like they have to, and you don't feel this way, obviously, but people feel like they have to kind of prove themselves or prove that they have some reason why they can share what they're sharing, some credibility. And I think your credibility just came out in how you taught, what you shared, that people were probably drawn into listening to your teachings without having to know any of that backstory. If I used to be a monk and I, did teacher training with Jack Cornfield, and we have to add, and I went to Stanford for my Ph.D., you didn't have to drop any of that.
No, no.
Uh,
Delighted meeting you this way. And I'm glad I could see you. And it just felt very, very friendly and nice. And maybe someday I'll visit Shelley and I can meet you in person.
yeah, if you come down to Santa Barbara, come knock on my door. We'll be here. Take care.
Bye bye.